Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 25 of the FITFO podcast, where I have conversations with amazing moms, dads, and thought leaders of all different industries in hopes to help me figure out just how do I become the father that I want to be for my two young girls. My guest on this episode is Billy Samoa Saleebey. He's an entrepreneur, a podcast host himself, and an award-winning filmmaker. He has led learning and development organizations for some of the most disruptive companies in the world, like Tesla, and now he's currently the CEO and founder of Podify, which is a podcast agency that helps production and promotion services to anybody like myself or organizations looking to build a podcast. He's also the host of Insight Out, where he interviews some of the best-selling authors, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders of our generation and really gains powerful insights and reveal how they make the most impact and how we can apply those to our daily lives as well. So I'd highly encourage you to check that out. So here we go with my episode with Billy. Hope you enjoy. Well, dude, thank you so much, Billy, for coming on the podcast today. I've been talking to you for a while now, but very fortunate to get some time with you in this setting. So definitely wanted to say thank you for coming on. Appreciate you.
Brian, it is an absolute pleasure. The first time we met, I'm like, yeah, I like this guy. He's a good guy. So anytime we get a chance to chat and talk shop, I'm all in, man.
Well, this one is definitely a little bit selfish for me because I need your help, obviously, growing this thing. I don't know if this is what I would call season 2, so to speak, but felt like I did a good run, getting some great guests on the show. But it's time, I think, to take it to the next level, and I need some support to be able to do that. I want to learn how to grow. Not only how do I acquire, new guests. Obviously, I've had a good network, but also how do I just optimize this? I've had a producer that's been amazing to help me out, but it feels like I need to take it to the next level with a commitment that can help me repeat and scale this process. But in doing this podcast creation, it's been fun. Obviously, it's a passion project. I'm not doing it to make money, but I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, Brian, how do I get started? And so I've been able to give them a little bit of advice, but to have somebody like you on that can give some professional expertise. Looking forward to talk more about that.
Let's do it, man. I'm all in. Just let me know what you're most curious about. I mean, we could start anywhere. So what's the topic that you think that would be the best one to lead off with?
So I guess let's start from the basics, right? So you've been doing podcasting for a while now. When did you get into it? I guess we can start there.
Yeah, well, I would go back well before actual podcast and think about when did I learn about sound? And when I learned about sound was 25 years ago in film school. And so the thing that I realized very, very quickly in film school is that you think film, you think that it's a visual medium. Yes, that's true. But where do most low budget films fail? It's the sound, because it takes you out of it. And if you have bad sound, it's a huge turnoff. And especially to people who want to have high quality content and they have an expectation. If you don't have good sound, you're automatically put into a bucket that you have low production value. So I learned about it then, but then your question about podcasting, I left Tesla in 2019. And when I left Tesla, I was head of product training and sales training globally. So my team, I had a team in Asia, I had a team in Europe, I had a team in North America. I had the whole globe, right? And so I had a pretty big, meaty, substantial role. My boss reported up to Elon Musk, and it was cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it was a really cool role to have. I got to teach people how to do their job, how to be effective in their role. And so, and prior to that, I led onboarding at Tesla. And then prior to that, I was at Solar City and I led leadership development at Solar City. And so I had a track record and a experience of teaching. And so education's always sort of been something that I've gravitated to. I did really well in sales. And so they're like, okay, you should go teach people how to do this. So that's how I got into sales training. And then flash forward to me leaving Tesla, I said, I still want to teach. I'm still curious. I still want to do that. What's the best medium to do that? And podcasting was that medium. And so, yeah, that's why I got started 2019. I started my own show, Inside Out. To this day, we've done, we're getting close to 300 episodes. And I love this space. I love the medium because it allows you to communicate in a very intimate way with people who might be riding their bike, might be going to the gym, doing laundry, activities. And you can do it over a long period. So you get intimacy, one, you get duration, because podcasts tend to be long form, and then you get frequency, because you get to hear people over and over again. And you build loyalty, you build trust. People get to know you because of a medium like this. And that's why I love this space.
Yeah, I think that's what I've really come to enjoy in doing this is, you get to know people at a deeper level, your guests, of course, but then your audience too, the people that will reach out after an episode. And what is it that resounded to them is something that, I didn't even think twice about, right? It was just
Yeah.
part of the natural conversation. And so I really love those moments. And that's why I want to continue to do this. For me, podcasting, like you said, I love coaching, I love training. I've led sales teams before as well. And I'm not to the level you have, so I might have to pivot on this and change to some more sales training. But this is fun for me, and being able to sit down and get to know somebody and what makes them tick and what makes them successful in their day job. And then obviously the thing that's most important to me at this stage of life is being a father, right? Being a dad. And it's something that none of us are professional or experts at, I should say. And, who hasn't had that tough time as a parent that they need to just either vent to another dad or mom, or, life lessons that we can all learn. So that way you can do something that maybe I had to learn the hard way from, and maybe the next guest doesn't have to do it themselves. So yeah, a lot to talk about on this podcast today, but you mentioned the audio and the sound. I noticed you're wearing headphones. I've never worn headphones before. You just educated me a little bit on that. But why don't you tell the audience, like, what's the difference and why does that help, from a nuanced perspective of being able to turn the sound quality up?
Great question. And I could geek out on sound stuff all day long and just talk shop. I like to simplify it. Here's the thing. First of all, on the dad note, we're all works in progress. I'm learning, you're learning. We're figuring this thing out, man. If we could share one nugget to each other and that makes us a better dad, I'm right there with you, man. I mean, it is so, so important to me to be there for my son. One of the things that really was important to me when I left corporate, and I luckily for me, my corporate roles, they were all remote. So I could make my own schedule, and I had the ability to be present, not only in the same space, but truly be present with my family, with my son. And by the way, I'm not perfect. I definitely had moments where I was on my laptop, on my phone, and I might have been there, but I wasn't present. You know what I'm talking about? So, but my point is that I had good backstory of being present, but I also wanted to be that when I did my own thing and starting my own business. And so to your question about sound, the first thing is everyone should have their own microphone. You have your own microphone. I have my own microphone because we're recording away from each other. But even when you're recording in the same space, if you look at a professional studio, it's not like there's one mic picking up the sound. So because you have a microphone, I have a microphone, when we put the headphones on, all of the sound that's coming from your microphone is going to my headphones. It's not going to my speaker. And what you want to avoid is having bleed over. So if I had my volume really high up in my headphones, that also wouldn't be good. Just like it wouldn't be good for it to play off of a speaker. So why does Joe Rogan and his guest, why are they both wearing headphones? For that reason as well. Same thing. If there's two microphones in a room and I'm talking, both microphones are going to pick it up. And so we don't want that to happen ideally. And so we want to space out the microphones. We want to keep them far apart. And we want to use headphones so that when we speak, it's not blasting over a speaker.
It makes so much sense. It's like, duh, why would you not do that? But I can't believe this is the first time I've done it. And that's what I want people to learn today is just those little tips and tricks, because there's so many people that want to start podcasts. I mean, you probably know some of these statistics that you can educate us on. But I mean, how many people are doing this day in and day out, not only from a professional perspective, but also personally, right? It's a fun passion project that people can do on the side. And it's a way to reach audience in just a different medium. So sound is definitely one aspect of it. What else would you say for somebody that's just getting started? Like, what are some of the basics if anybody listening wants to go create their own podcast that you would direct them to?
Oh man. Okay. So where do I begin? Well, first and foremost, to answer your question and talk a little bit about how many people are doing podcasts. There's, I think, around 3.5 to 4 million podcasts. However, there's only about 400,000 that are active. So if you think it's oversaturated or anything like that. It's actually not relative to, I forget how many, like 30 million blogs there are and how many YouTube channels with over 10,000 subscribers. I mean, like millions and millions. And so podcasting actually is still very fertile ground for anybody that takes it seriously, especially if you have long-term thinking. So the first bit of advice is pick a topic that you'll have a sustainable interest in. And I use those words very specifically. I interviewed a guy, and this is an insight that I got from him, named Mark Schaefer. And he says, you got to have long-term sustainable interest in something, not short-term thinking. And so I would say get really crystal clear on what topic or category you just have a lot of interest in, and you wouldn't lose interest after 8 episodes. That's one. 2, know why you're doing it. This podcast will be successful if X, fill in the blank. What's the intention behind your show? Why are you doing it? Why does it matter? And what do you want to get out of it? Be selfish, but also think about what you want to offer other people. Like, what are the end goals or results? And then the last thing I would think from just a purely foundational level is make sure that what you're doing has its own unique signature. Because there are still 400,000 podcasts out there. So what is your unique offering? I like to use the s'mores analogy. Like, graham crackers great, chocolate's great, marshmallow's great, but whoever invented s'mores created magic. And in this, for the same reason that a Hollywood producer may say it's this movie meets this movie and then give you a sense of what that new movie is all about, that's what you want to do with the podcast. How can you give it its own unique identity? And so part of that is niche down into something that is very hyper specific, and then put your own DNA, your own signature on it. I was at Podcast Movement. There's a great podcast called The Sales Evangelist. He started as a sales podcast, but then he narrowed down to be a B2B sales podcast. And then he says, okay, I'm going to narrow down again, and I'll be a B2B sales podcast for SaaS products. And then, he says, that's not narrow enough. So he narrowed it down again, B2B podcast for SaaS products for people who are just starting their sales career. And so think about it from a perspective of niche, but then also what is your own unique flavor for that niche?
I really like that you said that, to keep drilling down, right? Peel back the onion a little bit on like, what is your area, whether it's expertise or just interest, right? Something that's resounding to your why as a human being, like at your core, like a value that matters most to you, whether it's career related or not. And that's why I chose this topic is, being a parent never ends. Like being able to be on this mission and try to be a better father, a better husband. It's always going to continue to evolve. And there's always things that we can learn from, whether it's science and thinking about, neuroplasticity of our, 0 to 2-year-olds to, how does food in the home really impact their growth and development to, the way that you discipline. And, there's no right or wrong answer, but there's a lot of noise out there. But what I try to do is take some nuggets from each and every person that I encounter to be able to apply that. But now I'm wondering, am I being niche enough? Because I've talked to moms, I talk to dads, obviously, typically around pillars that I care about, right? So it's fitness, it's health and wellness, it's business, it's entrepreneurship, it's leadership, it's science and psychology. But now you got me wondering, how do I get a little bit more granular and focus on those types of guests?
And it's okay to pivot too. I mean, if you do decide to change or to get more niche or niche or whatever word we want to phrasing we want to use to describe it, it's okay to pivot. And it's also okay to start broad. I mean, there's no podcast police out there. That's the thing. Like, you could do you. So if you're feeling called to do a show that's going to talk about wellness, that's going to talk about parenting, that's going to talk about business, like, do that. It's better to do something that you're super interested in and enjoy doing it than to niche down and just have resentment for the show. So there's conventional wisdom, right? Let's throw conventional wisdom out the door. There's so many different ways you could approach it. You could start niche and widen out. You can start wide and then niche down. A lot of people are going to say do the former as opposed to the latter, like start niche and then widen out. But at the expense of what? Of your happiness? Enjoying doing what you're doing? Is it really worth it? So I think do what feels right to you. And then there's also different ways to niche. You can niche based on the avatar. You can niche based on the style of the show. and you could think about what's your style, what's your unique approach. What you really want to do is create a story around your show so that people will share it with other people. Oh, have you heard about this show that does X with this? Or they have a segment this, or those are the types of things that you want to do to get people to be more likely to tell other people about your show.
Yeah, that word of mouth is so important. And it's like, I can think about, I was listening to Tim Ferriss and Morgan Housel today, and it's like I shared that with 3 of my friends because there's one line within that whole, 2-hour show that really, I thought would bring value to them. And, how do you create those aha moments for people? And then they'll continue to pass it on. And it's kind of funny how it can trickle down. But you mentioned something a couple minutes ago that I've heard statistics about the podcast, right? You said 400,000 that are active. What does it take to be in the top percentiles of those 400,000? Like, to me, the first person that I talked to, they were like, if you get 125 downloads within the first 7 days, you're in like, I don't know if it was the top 20% or top 30%, something like that. Do you have any like accurate up-to-date statistics, or do you pay attention to any of that?
Yeah. Okay. So the stats, it all depends upon where you're getting them from. But here's what I could say these are pretty accurate. You'll be in the top 1% if you get like 30,000 downloads an episode. That's like the top 1% or top even 0.5%, I want to say. The average podcast does about 100, 130 downloads an episode, not very many. So when you look at a platform, there's a platform that gives, you're in the top X%. It's called Listen Notes. And I don't want to disparage this company because, I don't know where they're getting this knowledge or data from, but I think it kind of gives people a false perception of how they're doing. Oh, I'm in the top 5% or top 3%. I don't know what they're basing it on. I think they're basing it on all, who knows? Who knows what they're basing it on? Maybe all podcasts but they're making podcasters feel really good about their numbers. I would say the general numbers that I think are pretty accurate is if you're in the neighborhood of 5 to 10,000 downloads an episode, yeah, you might be in the top 5%. If you're in the top, you're doing 30,000 downloads, you're in the top 1% or 0.5%. And then if you're average, yeah, you're doing like, a couple hundred downloads an episode. But a lot of shows start and they're doing practically nothing. Like, that's just the reality. They're practically doing, 30, 40, 50 downloads an episode. And I would say I would focus less on downloads and more on creating an experience that people will crave and want to develop a habit of listening to. And then build a relationship, make it interactive. How do you interact with your audience? Even if it's only 50 people, do you know any of those 50 people? Do you know 2 of them, 3 of them, 10 of them? Like Taylor Swift, when she was starting out, I mean, she was still pretty big at the time, but she would do listener parties and she would go around table to table, meeting everybody like a wedding and like engaging with them. And so I would adapt a philosophy of how do you engage with as many of your listeners as possible and build relationships, make them a part of the experience, ask them what they like, ask them what they don't like, change and tweak your show to serve them, to serve those listeners. And so, yeah, ideally you want to grow your listener base, and that's great. But the reality is most podcasts are not going to be Joe Rogan. They're not going to have the type of numbers that are going to attract huge revenue from advertising. But if you could build a loyal following, even if it's small, then there's tons of things you could do to monetize. You could do sponsorship. You could do selling products. You could do building a community. You can do affiliate. You could sell other products, high ticket items. And then, of course, you could build your own thought leadership, your own brand recognition and awareness.
Yeah, that's I think about that often. It's like, what's the end goal in mind? Because I think people would love to say, if they start something like this, they want to become Joe Rogan. But the fact of the matter is, nobody, there's a very small percentage of people that are going to do that. And if that's your goal, you're probably building yourself up to be let down, right? And so I kind of come with no expectations. It's can I make one person their day better? Can I teach one person something that I get to learn along the way? Then that's a win, right? And you start from there and create that loyal following. From that thought. But how do you engage? Like, when I go to look at my podcast, obviously if somebody's reached out to me, I know they're listening, but what's the best way for me to try to find ways to connect to that audience? So that way I am giving them the episodes that they want to hear the most and making sure to build that community. Like, how do you give advice there for somebody starting to just build their local community of the pod?
Yeah, I have a few very, very practical ways to do this. So the First way is a tool you can download, and it's called SpeakPipe. And what SpeakPipe does is it allows listeners to leave voicemails, basically on your website or wherever you could embed this little widget. So it's really cool because then on your show, you can say, hey, leave us a message. Let us know what you think. Ask a question. Give us a topic idea, whatever. And so that's one way. You could use a platform like SpeakPipe. The other way is through a newsletter. So building a newsletter is a piece of property, basically, that you own and that you can continue to ask questions and engage with your listeners and your audience through the newsletter. You give them new information. You give them value. You ask them questions. You, through the email, give them opportunities to engage back. So I highly, highly suggest starting a newsletter and then really providing value that's going to resonate with your specific listener. And then the other suggestion I would make is in the episode, find ways to inspire them to engage. Tell them to leave a direct message on a specific social media challenge. You could do a event or a challenge for your listeners so that they can be a part of something that you're all doing together. So maybe you do a fitness challenge, dad fitness challenge for 30 days, and you get them to sign up to do this. And guess what? All of a sudden, now you got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people who are all part of this challenge. You could create a group on Facebook. You could create a group somewhere else. And then you got an active community on these other platforms. So I would look for ways to point people to specific things, be it a newsletter, a group, SpeakPipe, your website, social media DM, and get them to go to those places. And then when they go, relish that. Treat them like absolute gold. And I would suggest you could do a Zoom call with some of them. Hey, do you mind, we could jump on I had somebody send me a really nice email, or it was a direct message. And I was like, hey, do you think you could spend 15 minutes with me or 10 minutes with me? I'd love to find out, how you found the show, what you like about it. Maybe share a little bit just to give me a little understanding of your experience. And I've done that, and it's been so valuable because now you're building a relationship with them, you're getting information, and it'd be great then if you could pay it forward by helping them, maybe helping them with their business, being on their podcast, doing whatever it may be. Like always think of ways to give to other people, right? Don't just don't withdraw, make some deposits. Like you could withdraw, but you also got to make those deposits. So those are just a few ways. I mean, there's endless ways if you think creatively. The last thing I'll say is listen to other shows and see what they do. Every one of the big podcasters that are very, very successful at interaction, they're trying different things and they're modeling what you could be doing on your show to get more interaction.
How about the email newsletter? Because that's one that's been top of mind for me for a while. And I think we all get those newsletters that we're like, delete, like we get no value from, right? But there's the ones that I open up every single time they come, and they come at the right cadence. It's not too often. Maybe it's every Friday or once a week. Or, they're just a thought leader of somebody that I respect. And, I gain something from every time I open it up. But how have you seen it be successful with the people that you've coached and mentored, and what you're doing at Podify to help, people continue to expand their reach?
Yeah, I think branding the newsletter in a memorable way. And you mentioned Friday, probably because you subscribe to Tim Ferriss's Friday email or something like that, right? So it's like, I would say if you could brand it in a memorable way, 1, 2, be consistent and figure out what that consistency is. It weekly? Is it twice a week? And to your point, know when's too much, but also know when's not enough. So find the Goldilocks of what the right cadence is. And then, like anything, it's not just providing value, it's providing unique value. And what I mean by that is if they've heard it 100 other places, it's probably not unique value. So you want to give something to somebody that they have not heard elsewhere. Either it's packaged in a new way, meaning the delivery system of it is unique, or the information itself is unique because it challenges conventional wisdom. It turns a sort of commonly held belief on its head, or it is truly unique thought leadership, which you have to develop yourself by thinking of ways to create novelty, making something new.
Yeah, just with you saying that, I had to write down a couple notes because, I'd now look at what are the ones that make me open up every week or every day or whatever the cadence is, and how do you take bits of what they do but apply it to your audience in a way that, I think that they would find value because, there's so much information out there, and for me, it's I'm sure creating the newsletter would be a way for me to get more information in just as much as it is to get information out. Right. Because
Yeah.
somebody's going to be able to resonate with that post or that LinkedIn or whatever it is that you shared. And like, oh, have you seen this? And it's just another way to continue to feed the funnel and, find out what your audience is interested in. So, do
I
you have
love
any
that.
certain
You said it perfectly. Have you seen this? I mean, that says it all. Like that, even that phrasing. I mean, that's an idea right there. And so you're anything you do in life that's share worthy. It's because you feel almost a cognitive burden that you need to release this information as quickly as possible because it's weighing down on you, or you're so excited to share it because it's something so valuable.
anything that comes to mind for you in that regard lately?
Oh yeah, TikTok Shop. So anybody that is not taking TikTok Shop seriously needs to. So it, like most social media platforms that launch new products, features, anything, like they are going to do everything they can to make it successful. So they're putting a lot of money, a lot of organic reach. So yeah, I would say anybody who's got a product, service, anything to offer, figure out a way to get it on TikTok Shop because it's going to get pushed out there.
It's kind of like when Reels were released, and they were
Yeah.
just like anything you posted, it had the numbers were
Exactly.
crazy.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
TikTok Shop. Yeah, I've never stepped into the TikTok game. I think it would be a good segue. Social was one of the topics I wanted to discuss with you today, but where do you see the most return from a podcast perspective? And what, is it a reel? Is it just an image post? Is it, a minute and a half? Is it 5 minutes of a clip? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, any advice of what you've seen work well and what's hot right now, whether it's TikTok, whether Instagram's still performing, whether it's LinkedIn, because, this is more business focused in certain regards.
Yeah. Well, I would say any piece of content should be as long as it needs to be and not a second longer. It could be a podcast, it could be a short, it could be a LinkedIn post. Be relentless when it comes to editing. I made a LinkedIn post the other day. I said, in film school, I was taught to kill your babies. That's a very sort of shocking way to say, be okay with removing those things that you may be super proud of. Like if I wrote a book or a screenplay or a narration for a podcast, I may think the words sound beautiful, but if it doesn't advance the story, if it doesn't need to be there, cut it out. Get rid of it. You don't need it. Get rid of as much as you can. And so I would first say that is a general foundation. But as far as like what I'm bullish on, YouTube. And the reason
Mhm.
why is YouTube's investing a lot in podcasting. They're going to allow RSS feeds this year. They already have a pretty robust podcast infrastructure where you could set your show up as a podcast. And the line between podcasting and YouTube is totally blurred. You see it everywhere. I mean, big YouTubers are becoming podcasters. Why? Because the medium lends itself to creating content like crazy. And so I would say use YouTube, the platform, with a long-term as part of your long-term content strategy. Now, specifically in YouTube, YouTube Shorts still get a ton of organic reach. So I could put a YouTube short out of this conversation, cut out 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and that may get 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 views versus a show might only get 500 or 1,000, right? Like all of a sudden a video gets way more views than the audio. So I would say YouTube, specifically YouTube Shorts, followed closely behind by TikTok and Instagram Reels. That trifecta, and it's all vertical content, video content is still very, very hot. I don't see it changing because it's still hot. It's red hot. And so you do enough volume in those areas, something's going to go viral. So I would say be prolific. Put out as much content as you can. Take a 45-minute video interview and cut 6, 7, 8 clips out of it and then put them all on social. And one of them might go viral. Now, don't just put any clip by itself. Like, try to find something with a hook. Try to find something that emotionally connects, that's relatable, that's unique information. Put some music behind it. Put some B-roll, some imagery, some good graphics. Make it visually appealing. It doesn't need to be over the top high production value, but like enough to where it feels like a really good piece of content that flows, that moves quickly, and that people like and they find value out of.
How much do you think that costs, like from an investment perspective, for somebody to really learn how to do it, to be able to edit it, chop it up into 6, 7 episodes, be able to add those infos? Because to me, I know that's what I should be doing, but it seems so daunting.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, how do I find the time to do that? This is just a side thing that, if I want to be the best father, like, it feels like I'm being counterproductive to be spending 2 hours outside of this when I could be doing it with the family, and spending personal time with them. So, more of a selfish question again, but
No, I get it,
how do
man.
I learn how to do that quickly where I can be like, "Oh, I like those 5 segments, but I want somebody else to do it for me."
Well, listen, it's always going to be a trade-off. It's trade-off of your time or trade-off of your money, right? So which of the two do you want to pick, or none? You don't want to pick it. You want to just be with the family. So everyone's situation's different. Some people have money to invest in their show and also to pay for outsourcing. And then there's a wide range of what outsourcing costs. You go with a company like mine, we're not the most expensive, but we're also not the cheapest, right? I think we're in a good space because what we do is really high quality at a fair price. So you're getting a lot of value. I like to say always provide more in value than you take in payment. So that's sort of a philosophy I live by. But there are cheap, affordable options out there. AI has some really interesting video options that could get at least a good percentage of the way there. I say AI is a head start, but it's not the finish in most cases. So I would say, anyone in a situation like yours where you're doing it and you realize it's not going to be a revenue generator for you off the bat, you don't want to spend all your time on the podcast because you have family priorities, startup priorities, other things that are coming into play. Yeah, and maybe you don't do huge volume to start. Maybe you test the waters, you do a proof of concept, and you do maybe a video or a couple videos and see how they do, see if they work, and test and iterate. Maybe you partner with somebody who can help in other ways, help your business. Get creative with it. Like, maybe there's somebody who you can hire who can do a few videos a week for you. Or maybe there's an agency or a company you could hire to do a few videos a week for you. Or maybe you decide, hey, I'm gonna allocate 1 hour a week to do this editing. And I know it's daunting and overwhelming. So if by allocating it, you still feel overwhelmed, then maybe you choose to get an intern. Maybe an intern can help and do it for really affordable, like maybe even free to start, because they want to practice and they want to build their own portfolio of video content. I mean, like anything, it's just being creative and figuring out what's the right solution for you in the situation you're in.
Yeah, it goes with the theme of the podcast, right? Figure it out. So it's definitely something I want to continue to try to go down. And yeah, there's a lot of tools nowadays. Somebody had me just check out Magic Cast. I think was one of them. I no
Cast
affiliation,
Magic,
but
yeah. Cast
um,
Magic, yeah.
Cast Magic, thank you. And I tried it and it was awesome. I mean, truthfully, it was able to break down, give you some show notes, tell
Mhm.
you, what might be some insightful clips. But like you said, it wasn't perfect. It didn't call it out exactly where I would probably cut it or, what was the most prolific to me. But it was a starting point and it made it not
Mhm.
feel so daunting. So I'm curious if there's any other AI powered tools or anything else that gets your checklist of, okay, if you want to spend a little bit of money, here's a couple that you might want to take a look at.
Well, yeah, and I have my team try them all out because they help us too. I mean, there's Cap Show, they do show notes and social media copy. There's Opus Clips, they do video. There's Cast Magic, which has really come on the scene strong, and a lot of people have raved about them, and we like them. They do good work as well. There's Lychee. They're not an AI tool necessarily by itself. They have some human intervention, but I've talked with the co-founder, great guy from Israel, and he and his company have done some really interesting things. Descript is obviously a major player in the space. They partnered recently with one of the remote video recording platforms called Squadcast. But you just Google AI podcast production tools and you'll get a ton of different options. There's other ones in the copy space and the written space. Yeah. So then you could use a company who integrates AI into their platform and then offers some of the benefits of that. Like we do use some AI for some of our back end work, and then we pass along those savings to our clients. So for us, we recognize that for the type of clients that we have, it's got to be high quality. It's got to be, can't be mistakes, right? So we have to have human intervention. So maybe we'll do AI for 20% or 30% or 50% of the baseline, and then the other 50% is handled by a human.
Well, I love the work that you're doing. And yeah, it seems like you're adding a lot of value to the people that you bring into your ecosystem. And I'm already seeing it just from, the little things that we talked about today. But question for you is to continue to think about, okay, getting started on a podcast, microphone, right? We were talking about it before. Is there brands that you recommend? Like, is there a low cost, a medium cost, and the top level that you would recommend people to go check out? And how do you think about the mic?
I do, yeah. So audio is first and foremost not just about the equipment. Sound really is broken up, in my opinion, into three big buckets. One is equipment, two is environment, and three is technique. So let's break those down. So equipment, if you're on a budget and you need the cheapest available solution, go to Amazon, buy their Amazon mic that's the highest reviewed $50 mic. You'll be fine. That's good. That's the low price tier. You could get a great mic for $50. And that, anyone that's got thousands of reviews and they're like 5 stars or close to 5 stars, you're set. And get one that comes with a boom arm and you'll be all ready to go. It'll plug directly into your laptop. That will be infinitely better than using the internal mic in your computer. I do not suggest using the mic that comes base in your computer. Okay, so spend the $50. So then mid-tier, there's two options that I suggest. One is the MV7, okay, which is by Shure, MV7, and the other is the Rode NT USB. Rode and Shure make great microphones, and that's their USB microphone, so you don't need an audio interface, and it plugs straight into your computer. MV7 is fantastic. So is the Rode. Either one of those is going to get really high quality sound without a big expense. Those are in the 150 to 250 range. Now let's talk about like this level, which I'm pointing to right now is the Electro Voice RE20. Fantastic microphone. It's the microphone that most radio disc jockeys use. This mic is tried, true, tested. If a radio guy is using it, it's good. Now, you do need an audio interface, so you got to get an XLR cable, which is a little round cable that goes from your microphone to an audio interface. You use the Scarlett, which is great. You could use the Scarlett. You could also use Zoom. You could also use the Rodecaster, which is the great platform. It's a little bit more expensive, $600, $700, $800. There's a new version, but the Rodecaster, you plug the cord into the Rodecaster and from the Rodecaster into your computer. The other high-end microphone that you see a lot is the Shure SM7B. SM7B. Fantastic microphone. I think it's the sexiest microphone. It looks sleek. You see everybody using it on big podcasts. Great microphone. I have 2 of them myself. You can't go wrong. Michael Jackson recorded Thriller on that microphone. So that one is also XLR, and you need to plug it from your microphone to your audio interface and from the audio interface to your computer. The Shure just came out with a new version that allows you to basically you don't need to get a cloud lifter, which is a bit technical, but basically that cloud lifter amplifies the sound. So if you're using, for example, a Shure SM7B and you plug it into, say, the Scarlett, you're going to need something called the cloud lifter to give it that bump in gain or volume. So those are the microphones. The other pieces are so, so, so important too that I have to mention them. One, your environment matters. If you have a big, spacious room with hard surfaces, you're going to echo. So I always joke a hoarder would be a fantastic podcaster. Why? There's stuff all around. It's going to absorb the sound, especially soft things, blankets, pillows, towels. It doesn't need to be expensive. Find anything that's going to absorb the sound that's soft, and then you're good. Okay. You don't need to spend money on this. You have stuff all around you. If you recorded in a closet, it would be fantastic. So think in that way. Anywhere your voice projects, so draw a 180-degree line from your ears. Think about anything on the other side of that, put soft things all around you. And then the other part of environment, refrigerators, fans, air conditioners, computer noise, all of those things interfere. So listen to the room tone with nobody talking. Say, is this a good, clean, low sound environment where there's not other things competing with your voice? And then the last piece is technique. So
can I pause you real quick on the technique?
Okay.
How does this sound? Because this is a brand new room for me, never recorded. Is it okay? I mean, because I haven't put anything up. Okay.
It sounds pretty good, probably because your microphone's good. So certain microphones do better, even in environments that might not be optimal, especially dynamic microphones. And the reason dynamic microphones work so well is they block out all the other external sound versus a condenser mic's going to pick up everything. So yeah, it sounds pretty good. I'm actually quite happy with the sound, especially this goes perfect segue actually. Every microphone has what I call in layman's terms, a sweet spot. It's where the microphone picks up the voice or whatever is the sound maker. So if I talk to the side of this microphone, it doesn't sound as good. Test, 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 test. So when I talk into the sweet spot, which in this microphone is the top of the microphone, some microphones are side address microphones. Yours is a side address. So you want to turn it on its side and you want to speak into that. And so the other piece is get the microphone close to your mouth. Way out here, test, 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 test. You could see the difference between what it sounds like when the microphone's close to my mouth versus far away. I use the 4-finger rule, which is like be about 4 fingers from wherever it is that you're speaking into the mic. Too close, you're going to get plosives, which is P's, things of that nature. And I'm used to it, so I just naturally try to avoid those plosives because they're gonna cause basically for you to clip and it's just not an optimal sound. So man, I love that you asked that question. Hopefully this is valuable for some listeners who want to get good sound. It's not hard. You just got to do these simple things. And then the last thing I'll say on it is listen to your recordings. Listen closely. Do tests. So this is me from 12 inches away, 8 inches away, 6 inches away, 4 inches away. So now you could do a test. This is a test talking on the left side. This is a test talking on the right side, blah, blah, blah.
Man, I've never done that. That's embarrassing to admit. You know, you just take it out of the box and you just put it in here. But, you know,
I always hear this sound. Mark my words, brother. You're going to be like, I'm so glad that I had Billy on to help me with the your sound is perfect. It's really good, man. I'm excited to hear the final product, but your audio is very good.
Well, it's so funny because I'm like, oh, visually, I want the logo, which I don't even know if it's a good brand or not, but like to be facing out versus what you see here. To me, there's like, you know, it's the serial number or something. I don't know, not as aesthetically appealing in my opinion. And that was the only reason why I did it. But I never thought, why don't I test and make sure what side sounds better than the others? You know, it's just those little things. It's a game of inches, right? Anything that you do, why not do it to the best of your abilities? And this is one little way that I can do that. So I feel like we got a master class in sound. Now, you know, anybody that wants to get started, they know some mics, they know, you know, some tools, AI. What about as far as editing and being able to, you know, do that portion of it? You know, do you recommend people just, hey, post what you record, don't spend too much time, or it sounds like you're probably the opposite and you're more of a fanatic to make sure you take some time, you get good at editing. And are you using like Logic Pro as a tool that I have downloaded, but any other that you recommend in that
Yeah,
editing space?
there's a ton of tools. Audacity is a good free tool. Logic, Pro Tools. Of course, there's Adobe Audition. Those other ones are very pro, like Pro Tools and Logic, super pro. But Adobe Audition's a really good one. If you're in Europe, you would use like Cubase. There's a ton of tools. It's not about the tool, it's about your ability to master the tool. So, which tool can you learn and really get good at? GarageBand. I mean, out of the box, it's just a standard music tool, but it works and can work really well for podcasting. I kind of feel like unless you really love editing, outsource that. You can get somebody to do it dirt cheap. Find them on Fiverr, find them somewhere else. You get somebody to do it really, really affordably. Like we do it as well. We're not going to be as cheap as the guy you could find on Fiverr, but we're going to spend more time really making sure that the content's done well. So going back to your question, like what do you cut out, what do you not? Every show's different. I would suggest listen to the audiobook Make Noise by Eric Newsom, and then tell me you want to have a show without any editing. Chances are you're probably not going to tell me that, because he makes a really good argument for why you should be a little bit more mindful of what you take out of a podcast. So I'm definitely more of a believer of create an experience that actually cares about the audience and their time. Most people that just do a wham bam, just put it out there unedited. And yeah, can it work? Yes. And in some cases, it's the right approach. But I'd say the vast majority can at least afford to give it a once over and like take out moments that aren't necessary, that aren't serving the audience, because they're only going to invest time if they feel their time is well invested. So I would be more in the camp of creating an experience where you edit and take stuff out. But again, there's always exceptions to the rule. If your whole thing and your shtick is that you're raw, unfiltered, blah, 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 and you want to have the phone ringing and a 5-minute pause with nothing, hey, if it works for you, great. There's a podcast we did, and she has an amazing podcast, millions of downloads. She records from her car. She doesn't do much editing. It works for the relationship she's got with her listeners, and she's done really, really well. And I applaud her for it. Some people, that's not going to work as well.
That's not going to work as well for me. I just, that book, I think you might have been the one, I was trying to look it up, if you're the one that recommended it to me, but I did just read it. And it really has me thinking a lot about the editing aspect. At some points I'm like, am I asking too much of, the editor to cut out the little nuance, the ums, the ahs, the things that you just don't want to make it sound like an unarticulate conversation. But it's how you phrase it. And I'm going to steal that quote, but you owe it to the audience. If they're going to spend the time to listen, like, why would you not do the little things that are going to make it a more enjoyable experience for them?
Exactly. You hit it, man. Yeah.
What about, all right. So we talked about editing. We've talked about, what else questions do I get? You're the expert. Any other questions that you see people ask you about that you feel for anybody in the audience trying to start one, other things that I missed?
The biggest questions people want to know is, how do I grow my show? How do I monetize my show? Okay. So we've kind of talked a little bit about them, but I'll dive into each of those. So from a growth, leverage. What I mean by that is, how do you leverage organic reach? How do you leverage the reach of other people who have a platform? And how do you leverage players through paid media? So it's organic, collaboration, and paid. Those are the 3 leverage points. So organic, social media, SEO, trends, news, putting your show in a place where it's in front of the momentum train. You're not trying to chase the momentum train, you're in front of it. So if TikTok is the organic train, you're in front of it. You're getting in the right trends at the right time, and you're capitalizing on it. SEO, like, words matter. 74% of podcasts are found because people search for it. 24% are found because people tell other people about it. So create a show other people will tell about it. So that's organic. The second piece is you collaborate with your competitors. Find people who have a show about that helps and empowers dads, dad-oriented podcasts. If all you did was get on other dad shows and you made it a priority, I want to be on 30 dad shows in the next 60 days. Sounds crazy. It's not. You can absolutely do that. Your audience will expand exponentially because of that, especially if they're the right dad shows. Okay. Big disclaimer. Some people have a dad show, but only 3 listeners. Okay. That's not going to help as much as a dad show that's really doing well. So that's 2. The third thing is you can't ignore pay to play. Mopod is an amazing platform. Headliner, Castbox, Overcast, Podcast Addicts, all of these, Player FM, all of these platforms that exist give you the ability to pay to get downloads and pay to get listeners and pay to get followers. There's some new platforms like Podroll and Trailergram. So those are all important. Now, as far as monetization, there's 5 pillars of monetization, right? Advertising is what everybody thinks about, but few can do. You're getting paid per 1,000 downloads, only about $15, maybe at the most $50. So you need tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of downloads. The second pillar of monetization is the cousin to advertising, which is sponsorship, which works really well if you have a highly targeted, identifiable target market. Okay. So it works really well. Like if you're in the small niche of agriculture, like vertical farming, like my friend Harry Duran, and you start the vertical farming podcast, great. You're going to get an audience or potential sponsors that are going to want to sponsor your show, but it's very, very targeted demographic. Third pillar of monetization is affiliate. You sell other people's products, you refer other people's products. This works really well if you have a loyal audience, an audience that is very, very, Tim Ferriss is a great example, has a very loyal audience. They trust him. So when he recommends something, people listen. The fourth thing is you sell your own product or service. You have a consulting agency. You have a product that you offer, a course, a service that you provide. Or maybe you're a business owner and you want people to have familiarity with your brand, right? And so maybe that's you. And then the fifth thing is you build community and you sell people on the value of being a part of that community, and they're willing to pay a monthly subscription or fee to be part of that community. So those are just some ideas from growth and monetization.
Man, I've got so much to learn and so much to improve on, but this has been like a masterclass on creating a podcast, and I know it's going to be super helpful for me. How do you think about it from the family perspective now? Does your son show any interest on wanting to do this? Because I'm seeing a lot of parents where they'll include their, children, or they'll help them kind of get theirs off the ground and running, being, in the space. Like, is that something you ever think about?
All the time. I've started a podcast with my son. It's called Things You Didn't Know. He kind of lost interest a little bit, so we put the pause on that. But now we're starting a new show all about coming of age movies. So we're going to watch movies like Goonies, and other movies, Stand By Me, and things like that are movies that both he and I love, and we're going to talk about those movies. So that's a little sneak peek. I haven't told many people about that, by the way. So that's one way. But then, there's tons of other ways. I just met with the podcaster. I just did an interview just now. His son's 30, but because he's 60, but his son does his producing, does his editing. I work with my dad because he's helping for business development for my podcast production company, Podify. He is a big networker, so he's generating referrals for us for people who we can help with their podcast. So, again, get creative, know your situation. Maybe there's ways you could integrate your kids, your family into the experience. Everyone's in a different situation. Like my son's almost 12, so we could do a podcast about coming of age movies. If you have a younger family, maybe you bring them in for one of the recordings. Maybe you ask them questions. Maybe you have them do a commercial for you or an ad spot, or maybe you do a video with them, or maybe you have them interview you. I would say there's so many different ways you could do it. You just got to get creative with it.
Man, you've got me thinking about a couple funny ideas now
yeah, buddy.
to incorporate. What about another thing that came to mind because I love incorporating the family as much as you can, or as much as they want to be a part of it too, right? I think obviously you also want to keep that separate and, maybe not top of mind and that public facing, right? Obviously, a lot more private things that don't need to be on the podcast or market. And that's something I struggle with is like, what do I want to show? How much do I want to post? I know I need to be posting more, but part of it's like, that's the personal time that I don't necessarily want to be putting out into the public lens. Do you ever have people that bring that internal struggle, and any thoughts that you would share there?
Yeah, man, it's super personal. I think everybody's a little bit different. I have become less of I used to do a lot of sharing of family, like a lot. And I kind of, I don't regret it because it was what I did, but I also recognize that my son needs to have a say. And so if he doesn't want to be on social media, I should be mindful of that. I don't know if this is what your question is, but this is the way I interpreted it. I think every situation's different. You should be very thoughtful and mindful about you, your values, your family's values, your family's wishes, and have conversations about it. So, Gary Vee is a great example. He's all over social media, but he's very, very protective of his kids. They're not. At least the last I checked. And so even though he's super public facing, he's chosen to have his family not be. And so I think I probably used the kid card a lot, like, hey, look at my kid. He's cute. People love personal. They love vulnerability. Did the same thing with my wife. And I think, ask yourself the question, am I using this for a dopamine hit? Am I using this in a not so selfless way? And if the answer is no, you're using it in a very selfish way, maybe rethink, is this the best way? And then to your point on the family time, yeah, I mean, that's just a prioritization thing. Calendar block time to do the activities that are most important to you. And then calendar block time for your family that's present time with them.
Yeah, that's always top of mind, right? Making sure that you're present in the home and trying to make them a part of this journey too, right? I think when I wanted to do this was partially to show to my girls, it's like, if you have something that you're interested in, that you do have a passion in, that you should go all in and you should try it.
Totally.
And if you don't succeed, that's okay. But at least it wasn't for a lack of effort.
That's right.
And so, I think that's what I'm doing, but I am trying to balance it because the reason why I don't post as much is because I don't really want to use it for the dopamine hit. I just, I don't think that that's the right way to go about it. Not judging people if they do or they don't, but yeah, I'm kind of considering, that's why I like the YouTube aspect versus, the Instagram or TikTok. I don't have a TikTok personally, and I don't have a YouTube personally. So, I can show the podcast on there and it's not going to blend as much of the personal pictures that I want to show my friends and family that I love on Instagram, right? And hopefully not get to some of those, weird creeper situations that you hear about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, this has been epic, man. Seriously, I didn't even get to really any of the topics outside of the podcast, but that was the main part for me to learn and grow. And that's what this is out, figuring out how to become a better father and how to become a better podcaster, to be able to help others become better at whatever they're trying to get improvements on. And I know there's a lot of people that want to do this. I think you'd be a great resource for anybody to reach out to. You're on LinkedIn. People can definitely take a look to get some time with you from a Calendly link. What you're doing with Podify seems to be incredible, and I can't wait to dive in more. Anything else I can do to serve you or to, boast what you're doing and make sure people are aware of, the great work?
I appreciate it, Brian, man. Look, I like I said at the beginning, I instantly thought, this guy's super cool. I could hang out with him endlessly and we just have a good time. You remind me of a couple of my really, really, really good friend. One specific really good friend. There's something about you that reminds me of him. And he's one of the best, most kind, decent, humble, family-oriented people who I've ever met. And so I didn't told you that, but there's always been that association. So, man, no, if anybody wants to contact me, you said it. You go find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM. I'm a human. I'll respond. And I look for other people who want to tell stories, who want to share their wisdom, who want to do something more than what they're already doing. And I hope to deliver a platform for them to do that through podcasting, through video, through social, and all the ways that we communicate in today's modern age. And I'm learning. I'm constantly doing what I can to serve those around me in the best way that I can. Most of what I shared today, I learned from somebody else. If I could pay it forward, amazing. So yeah, you could go to Podify, you could go check out our website, or you could just go to LinkedIn and you could find us there. If you want, listen to my shows, Inside Out or Relearned. I appreciate your time. Look, one thing I'll say about this interview, maybe you didn't get to every question you're going to ask, but the questions you did ask hopefully provided value. And now I think it's there's a lot of things shared specific to podcasts. So from a titling perspective, from a content perspective, you didn't go 10 million directions. You kind of did keep it focused on the podcast front. So I think that's a win.
Yeah, and tangible things that people can go do and execute on, because I know there are things that I can go do and implement right away. So yeah, I know it's, this is what you do for a living now, to give up a career at Tesla to go help others create podcasts and bring them to life, but to offer so much of this knowledge for free, man. Again, just really appreciate you. Thank you so much, and look forward to many more conversations to come.
Feelings mutual. Thanks, Brian.
And that's a wrap for my episode with Billy. Man, so many takeaways, things that I'm going to go apply right away to hopefully help grow this podcast. If you're thinking of starting one, hopefully this will be that motivating push to let you know it's not as hard as you think. There's plenty of levels that you can take this to, but some basic things just to get started. So if you want to learn more from Billy, check him out on LinkedIn. I'll make sure to put his shows there as well, so you can give those a listen. And again, if you liked the episode, it would fire me up for you to leave a review, give me a comment, subscribe, please press that button. And obviously YouTube, if you guys can help me grow this channel as well, it would be much, much appreciated. So until next time, go be great and go FITFO some shit out.